baby, what you telling me? See me, I'm with the gang, lazima hustle.
Wagwan, beautiful people. Welcome to the Just to Kick It is a Blessing podcast with your host, Keith Tupac Gatiramu. Before I get started, I'd like to say thank you to everyone that listened to my podcast. I'd like to say thank you so much. For those who even went out of their way to share feedback with me, thank you. I am truly grateful for that. Today, I will be talking about self-love. This was not the second episode I planned on recording or even publishing. However, because of a number of conversations I've had with some of you after releasing the first episode, self-love was a recurring topic. Self-love kept on coming up. And just like me, I think a lot of us struggle with self-love. I think so many of us struggle with loving ourselves. You may agree with me on some of the things I say. You may disagree with me on others. However, if you find something that speaks to you or something that you can relate to, kindly use it. So what is self-love? Before I define what self-love is, I'd like you to think about, actually rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 on how much self-love you practice, or even in better words, how much do you love yourself? And I'm not talking about that self-love that some of you are thinking about. I'm talking about real self-love. I'll read for you a couple definitions I came across regarding self-love. Number 1, self-love means having a high regard for your own well-being and happiness. Number 2, self-love means taking care of your own needs and not sacrificing your well-being to please others. Number 3, self-love means not settling for less than you deserve. Loving yourself does not necessarily mean that you feel or think you are the most attractive person in the world, or the smartest person in the world, or the richest person in the world, or the most talented person in the world. Loving yourself means accepting your so-called weaknesses or things you do not necessarily like about yourself, and understanding that is what makes you you. That is what makes you unique. I think the person that I know that practices the most self-love or loves themselves the most is Kwame Setutsi. But before I share with you why I think or feel that, let me talk a bit about myself. Before the start of 2020, I think I'd rate myself on the scale of self-love either 3 or 4. I had very little love for myself. The only things in my life I could see was what was wrong. I barely looked at what was right. I barely looked at what was unique about me. And let me tell you something, guys. There will always be guys out there that are richer than you, smarter than you, more attractive than you, have better or more materialistic things than you. Whatever the comparison you use, there will always be someone out there better than you. However, there will never be another you. Always remember that. There will never be another you. Anyways, back to my story. And by the end of it, you will realize how ridiculous it is. 2 things that played a major role in my low ranking of self-love, or me loving myself very little, was my height, and the other one was not having a beard. So let's start with the height story. Let me explain to you why that affected me, or how it affected how much I loved myself. So back when I was in Jaffrey, I used to be the smallest boy in class, no cap. And back then my name was Smalls. That was my nickname. That's what they used to call me back then. And there were so many jokes my friends would crack about me. And some of my friends still crack those jokes about being small, you know? I remember once when we went to a restaurant with some of my friends, and one of them told the waiter, Ebu, give that guy the kiddie menu, as he pointed at me, you know? And back then, some of these jokes would really hurt me, you know? They'd really get to me. However, nowadays I look back at it and to me it's just banter, you know? So let's talk about the beard one. For the longest time ever, I have always wanted a beard, you know? I feel like it brings out such a masculine look, you know? So last year, I saw both my younger brother's beards start growing, and my chin was still very smooth. Wah! I started to feel pressure. You know, pressure. To make it even worse, people that I consider to be like my younger brothers, the likes of Jamie, Samir, Kahush, Mutai, those guys started having full beards. So I called one of my friends. I asked him, yo, bro, how do I get a beard? You know? The guy told me, yo, bro, if you want a beard, this is what you need to do. Every morning, put either shaving cream or soap on your chin and shave. So I did that every morning for the next 3 months. And still, I got no beard. Even until today, I have no beard. It's just like 3 hairs I have on my chin. In fact, I'm even touching them as I record this podcast. Anyways, that's a story for another day. From the conversations I've had with some of you concerning self-love, we all suffer from the same thing, you know? It may not be based on your outward appearance. It may be based on what you feel, your materialistic possessions, and the like. Anyways, looking back at both situations, I have gotten to learn from both of them. Even if today I slept and magically woke up taller or with a beard, or even both, if I don't love myself, then I definitely still won't, despite getting that. As a matter of fact, I'll end up looking for the next wrong thing. Self-love comes from within. It is accepting you for who you are and allowing yourself to prosper. You see, the thing with social media and all other kinds of media, it shows us how, or it portrays to us how we should all look, or what we should all have to feel a certain type of way. I'll give you an example. Some people say the perfect man is tall, dark, and handsome. So what happens to someone like me that's short and light? On top of that, doesn't even have a beard. Does that make me imperfect? It tells us that the perfect woman should look a certain way. I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to get in any sort of trouble. However, does that mean if a woman does not fall within those boundaries, she is imperfect? First of all, I don't think there's anyone that's perfect. We all have our flaws. Even the person that you think is completely perfect, if you sat down today with them and had an honest conversation with them, they would share with you their flaws. In my opinion, what I believe makes them seem close to perfect is their self-love, how much those people love themselves. Once you learn to love yourself for who you are, nothing can tear you down. You need to understand that you are uniquely and beautifully made. God created human beings. He did not create robots. And think about it. It would be much easier to create a robot because everything would be the same. But God sat down and God took his valuable time to create you. That should mean something to you. If God loves you that much, why shouldn't you love yourself even more? Also, don't be too hard on yourself, I always say the most important things are what you say to yourself, not what others say about you. Sometimes I know we make mistakes, such as dating the wrong person, hooking up with someone we shouldn't have, or even getting cheated on. And that sometimes may change how we feel about ourselves. Don't let that change how you feel about yourself. Shit happens, move on, just learn from the mistake. A lot of us think self-love comes with being famous or owning materialistic things. Well, I'm here to break the bad news. It doesn't. We think that self-love comes from hanging out with certain people or dating someone specific. Even if you dated a specific person and they loved you unconditionally, if you don't love yourself, then all that won't matter. Self-love is something that comes from within. We live in a world where everyone wants to be famous. We live in a world where we think that if we have more likes on social media, that it brings more value into our lives. That the more people that like our photos on social media, or the more people that follow us, the more we will love ourselves. But that is wrong. It doesn't work like that. The other day, one of my friends asked me, why is it I am such a good person and I have very few friends, while there are other people there that are not so good but have more friends? To be honest, I didn't know what to tell them. The only thing I could tell them was, what matters is not the quantity of your circle, it's the quality of your circle that matters. I think so many of us young men end up being toxic partners because we struggle with self-love. If you do not love yourself, how do you expect to love another person? How do you expect to give someone something you do not have? For example, how can I give someone 5 apples if I don't have 5 apples? It doesn't make sense. And the truth is, looking back at some of my past relationships, my low level of self-love is what made me a toxic partner, despite how amazing the other person was. I always saw them as a problem, when the truth is I myself was the problem. And looking back at it, because of my low level of self-love, I reflected some of my insecurities on them. If you look at the second definition I read, which says, self-love means taking care of your own needs and not sacrificing your well-being to please others. Because I struggled with self-love, I did so many things to please other people. I did so many things that went against my values. I did so many things that I ended up even having fights with my parents and siblings just to please others. Once you love yourself, no one can take advantage of you. No one can make you do something that goes against your values. Even in first aid class, they tell you, before you help someone else, make sure you yourself are not in danger. Even in the case of a flight emergency, they tell you, put on your mask first before you help your neighbor. So why is it we keep on putting people first? Why is it we still keep having friends we shouldn't have? Why is it we keep on dating a person we shouldn't date. So now, let me tell you why I think Kwame is the person I personally think or feel loves themselves the most or practices the most self-love. Firstly, Kwame started a company, a fashion company named Setutsi after him, you know. If you've never seen it or heard of it, go and check it out. Secondly, Kwame has about 3 or 4 tattoos of either his name or an outline of a photo he took and liked. At first, when I saw them, I used to make fun of him, you know. Kwanza, one of them, it looks like he's taking a dump. However, now I understand he has them because he loves himself. He really loves himself. Thirdly, Kwame has so much merchandise branded with either his name or his photos. Even recently, he went for a haircut, and you know what he decided to do? Put his name on his head. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's the way you should practice self-love. What I'm trying to say is, look for ways that mean something to you. Look for something that works for you. I wrote something small, which I'll read for you. What I believe self-love is giving yourself the attention and desire that you as a person deserve without having to search for it in other people. Giving yourself the time of day to work on the things that you truly care about in order to make your heart full. Self-love is looking at the feelings that make you your happiest and amplifying them, when also carefully looking at the feelings that make you feel least desirable and fixing them. I believe it's canceling out the exterior things that don't bring any color into your life and magnifying onto the things that expand your color palette. I once heard a guy say that self-love is the cure for self-hate. When you start to love yourself, good things happen to you. One of the things that affects your mental well-being is your ability to love yourself. How do you expect to be happy if you don't love yourself? To end this episode, I'd like to quote a J. Cole song called Love Yours. Whether you've listened to it before or not, kindly listen to it. I can't sing, but this is what J. Cole says. Always gonna be a bigger house somewhere, but brother, feel me, long as that people in that house love you dearly. Always gonna be a whip that's better than the one you got. Always gonna be some clothes fresher than the one you rock. Always gonna be a girl that's better out there on the tours. But you ain't never gonna be happy till you love yours. No such thing as a life that's better than yours. No such thing as a life that's better than yours. No such thing. And self-love isn't something you can turn on. It's not a switch. It's a journey you have to embark on. Put yourself first. It's not selfish, it's self-love. I'd like to thank everyone that has made it this far. From the bottom of my heart, I genuinely appreciate it. I hope you've been able to learn at least one thing. For any questions, reviews, or just anything in general, feel free to reach out to me through my social media. Thank you, and God bless you all.
It's the dream chaser. Okay, accumulate the paper. Could flex, I flex for hater. Conge, I do that later. My mom told me do me. Carrots, I need cheese. Akili open doors. Akili is my key. Who is the Iba Kitu? You see fakes and I see through. You get pesa, yeah, me too. Lights in my room blue. Mimi pimp, I pimp my room. Onge, I pimp your chick too. Oh boy, you look like crystals. Police see that's an issue. Baby, what you telling me? See me, I'm with the gang, lazima hustle. Yeah. Now Bado demons chasing me. Bado, I'm still dipping double.